Hi, my name is Libby Mannix, and for my STEM Scholars Capstone project, I explored Microsoft Excel in the modern workplace. So to give you some background, I'm a data analytics major here at Ohio State, and after my first year, I landed an internship in Cincinnati with Great American Insurance. And after a year of being a data analytics major, I thought I had all the skills I needed to do any job. But when I got there, I was wrong, and I realized I did not fully have a grasp on all the analytical and data manipulation tools Excel has to offer. So, for my STEM capstone, that is why I chose this project. Am hoping, or I was hoping, to use what I learned to share with other students so they too are more prepared for their future careers. So the first function in Excel that I use all the time in work and I found very helpful is the VLOOKUP function. And so a VLOOKUP is used to match a value that you are looking for in a table and retrieve another value that is corresponding to it. So in this example, we have a list of states and the amount of McDonald's in that state. So this isn't a big table, but if you have a huge table, you couldn't just look at it and be like, oh, North Carolina has 475 McDonald's. So that's where VLOOKUP comes in. You would first put what you were looking for, in this case, NC, and then you would put the table, the whole array, and then the index of which column you want to retrieve. So indexing in Excel starts at 1. And so here we are looking for the second column, which is the quantity. And false represents that you want an exact match. So with this function, it pulls that North Carolina has 475 McDonald's. And this function is very helpful with large tables of data with lots of rows and columns. It works great. And then similarly, an index function kind of does the opposite. So you give the position and it returns the data in that position. So in the first example, you can see what's the GPA of the fourth person. You give it the row, which is 4, and the column index, which is 2, and it will return the data that is in that cell, which is 3.4. Now, index is often used with the function match because you don't always know where the data you're looking for is in a table. So match will retrieve the position of the data that you give it. So in this example, we want to know what major Jacob is. Well, if we have a huge table, we won't necessarily know that Jacob is, say, the third person. In this case, if it's really long, you don't want to search through and count where Jacob is in the table. So instead you use match, and in this case, it returns the row position of the word Jacob. And when you have that inside an index function, it will use those two things to pull his major, which is political science. Another kind of function that I use all the time in my work is a sum if. And so sum ifs are, it's a way to sum certain values in a given range. So you can narrow down your data by some certain criteria. So in this example, if we were given a bunch of pairs of shoes, but we only want to know how many of those are red, we can say sum if the pairs of shoes are red. And very similarly, sum ifs work basically the same way, but you can have many different criteria. So it's just a way of narrowing down your data and finding more about your data set with very simple equations. I'd also like to share with you guys some other Excel tips that I learned while working that just make my day-to-day job much more efficient. So I'm going to switch screens over to an Excel workbook. And first I'm going to look at what you might get if you get if you just export data. So let's just say you work for Target and they want to know what the names of the people are who have shopped there in the past week. Well, you might export the data and get a list like this one. But as you can see, some people, like myself, shop at Target multiple times a week. And that kind of makes the data messy. You don't want duplicates in your data all the time. So an easy way to solve that is you just highlight your data, and then you hit the data tab, and right over here is a remove duplicates. So when you hit that, it will find all your duplicates and remove them. Now this looks much better, but maybe you want to sort them alphabetically. So up here are all different kinds of sorts you can do. Alphabetically is already like this. So I just click it and there you have it. Other just little things that make my job or day go quicker is if you hit Control Shift and then arrows, I'm going to hit the down arrow. It highlights everything. So if you have a really, really long set of data and you want to know how much is there or how many rows there are, or you just need to pan down to the bottom, Control Shift down is very helpful. And similarly, if you have a lot of columns, Control Shift over works great. Yeah, okay, so let's go to the next, the formulas. And so the first thing I like to show is F2. If we go into this box up here, you can see the equation up in the top box up here, but if you hit F2, it'll highlight what data it is using in that calculation. So it just makes things much easier to see. It makes it more visual. It also makes things easier to catch mistakes. So I hit escape, come out of that. F9 also is great for helping find mistakes or just like debugging formulas. So if you write a formula and it's not necessarily coming out what you expect it to, you can go into the formula box and highlight a particular part of the formula and hit F9, and it calculates just that part of the formula. So you can test your formula piece by piece and see what might be causing an issue or make sure it's working right. So in this case, that means false, so we know it's going to be the second option in this if statement. So in an if statement, it goes, if this logic is true, you use the first value. If the logic is false, you use the second. Next easy little tip is to copy down formulas. You can just hit this little green box twice, and it copies it down to the end of like the last row. If you have like rows of data, it'll copy it down to where the rest are, which is much more efficient than like holding the bottom of the box and dragging it down. So that works great. But let's say we want to do that over here. We can copy down the formula from how many major credits I'm taking to how many non-major credits I'm taking, and then ideally just switch the Y to an N. But if we were to do that, let's do that real quick and I can show you. Go in here, switch this to an N. But as you can see, if I hit F2, it's not including this top row of data. And that's because when I dragged it down, it dragged down the rest of the formula with it. So instead of starting at row 3, it now starts at row 4. So in order to fix that, I'm going to delete that, go up here. We want to lock these cells because we don't want this range to change. So to lock these cells, I'm going to hit F4. I'm going to hit between here, hit F4. And if I do this for every range, now when I drag this down, change the Y to an N, we get the correct amount of non-major credits I am taking. The last thing that helps me all the time in my day-to-day work is filtering. So all you got to do is highlight your column headers and hit this filter button. And then if I want to see, say, how many online classes I'm taking this semester, I would uncheck anything that I don't want to see. And then there's just my online classes. So that's about it. Like I said, Excel is super easy. It's so easy to learn. It's just not taught a lot in our curriculum. But it is very useful and has some really powerful data manipulation tools. So I hope you learned a lot from this and ask me any questions. Thank you for watching.